Welcome back to the final part of Final Fantasy.
Oh, here we are again in the Chaos Shrine. It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Except in Final Fantasy, it's all a cycle, and it will repeat itself endlessly for all time until we intervene through a time paradox.
Or until we defeat you, Yevon.
Something like that. So these bats that have been around since the beginning of the game were actually Lufinian warriors who tried to stop the original evil from causing this time loop, but they failed and have been turned into bats.
Oh, so that's why they were in all the shrines and the like. Sorry, I didn't mean to piss on your meaningful commentary, mate.
No, but yeah, it's actually just these 5 bats. It's not all bats in all dungeons, it's these original 5 from the beginning of the game, and you can't understand them until you learn the Lufinian language. And I think that's a really cool thing that they throw in the game, that these characters, even though they may seem to just be like dungeon atmosphere building characters or just NPCs, they're actually part of the plot. They're very important.
Okay, so Chaos Shrine bats, Lufidians, normal bats, just there to indicate the presence of evil.
Exactly.
Okay, well, my D will stay frosty.
By having all 4 crystals lit, we were able to move a tablet or whatever, and now we've traveled 2,000 years in the past. You can tell because the Chaos Shrine music is different, and nothing else. Also, the front door is closed. You can't go explore the world map of 2,000 years ago. That's not until Chrono Trigger, which, hey, that is well worth the wait, but you just need to know that with the darker, more ambient music, we are in the Chaos Shrine of 2,000 years ago. This is where the 4 fiends were originally spawned by an original evil, then sent into the future.
Time travel. I watched Doctor Who and this stuff still makes my head reel.
Don't worry, the whole time travel aspect of Final Fantasy 1 does not make too much sense, because it's a rather unclosed time circle. Essentially, well, this happened because this happened, well, because the first thing happened because this happened. There's no, like, initial point to actually start the loop. It's a pretty endless loop. So with the actual dungeon itself of the Chaos Shrine in the past is that we have to actually go up a couple floors, then descend down to the very bottom floor. So we're still continuing a lot of backtracking even into the final dungeon. The problem is that this dungeon already has just as many, if not more, floors than even the longest dungeon. It's already the longest dungeon in the game, but they also throw in the backtracking. Plus, on top of that, there's no mid-save points yet in the game. That becomes a later RPG thing where there's like a save point before a boss or whatever. If you have a black mage, you can cast warp and exit the dungeon and then heal and restock all your items, but you're gonna have to restart the dungeon from the beginning. So doing this dungeon is an ordeal.
Yep, it is a task in and of itself, and there's squads of bad men everywhere. This place has just gone to pot.
It's so bad. They're bad. I wonder if they all have, like, power gauntlets or some shit. Luckily, because our characters are so beastly OP, I've made sure to give them all the best, if not near the best, gear that they can possibly have. With mages, it's a bit easier because there's only really one item per inventory slot that's the best, and there's multiple of them because I guess the game doesn't expect you to have more than one mage. So Richie and Carter are pretty much going to have the exact same items. They're going to have maximum defense, but also they're going to be safe from instant death. It's Tom and Helldragon that it gets a bit difficult. There's a maximum defense armor set for fighters, which I believe I give Tom. And then there's a complete set of gear that I give to Helldragon. So even though there's a discrepancy in who has what armor, they're both pretty much at the max that they can possibly get. And they're both equally protected from instant death, which is very important.
Of course, and it's nice to see we finally got a recall of that guy, even if he did die in about 10 seconds.
Yeah, but look at the experience he gave us.
Pathetic.
I sense something evil within the Chaos Shrine.
No shit. I'd be mad if you didn't, honestly.
And here we finally, after 11 parts, which, you know, in the context of most LP isn't all that much, we're finally using the lute. The lute that Princess Sarah gave us all the way back in the very first part after we saved her, because it was apparently the keepsake of the royal family. And you're stuck with it in your inventory and you're wondering, why the fuck do I even have this? And it's not until the final dungeon, about a quarter of the way through the final dungeon, that you finally use the lute.
What is its actual purpose? Because I was thinking about it, I was ruminating, if you will, and I thought it would, slow down the encounter rate or something.
No, the lute is just supposed to teleport you to a floor that allows you to progress through the lower portion of the dungeon.
Okay.
In the original NES, you can actually miss the lute. Like, there's nothing in the game that stops you and says, hey, talk to Princess Sarah, get the lute. It's mandatory for the final dungeon. Remakes will later do that, where if you try to exit the king's chamber, Sarah will stop you and be like, hey, wait. Let me give you this treasure real quick, and then you have no idea what it's for. But if you're playing the original NES, you can get stuck in the final dungeon in the past, wondering, why can't I open this slab tablet that is full of evil?
That's shitty.
That is old school game programming, and I will admit, very shitty. But now that we got teleported to that separate area, we're actually now descending to the Chaos Shrine, to the final boss. The floor is filled with elements of different enemies. This floor is actually full of a lot of earth elemental enemies, so, you know, bring a lot of fire, bring a lot of, if you have a white mage, Dia spells, because most of the earth related enemies tend to be undead. Or, you know, if you're me, pack along the strongest weapons, including Excalibur,
yes,
and also infinite use spell items. Seriously, even to the end of the game, you would think an item I got before beating the Fire Fiend would eventually, like, the use of it would teeter off. But no, even through the final dungeon, having infinite heal spells is invaluable. It is the best item ever. But of course I'm going to use the Mage Staff because it allows him to cast fire spells, which earth elements are weak to. That ends up cutting off after a certain point in the series, and earth tends to either be weak to wind or completely immune to wind. The series hasn't really quite figured out what exactly it wants earth elementals to be weak to.
What level does the game recommend you be before you take on the warp mech, might I ask? Because you don't seem to be anywhere near the cap.
The war mech, I have seen 30 to 40.
Okay, well, so I guess you'll just show it off?
At this point, yes.
Well, at least you're honest about it.
And here's the reason why this floor is full of earth elemental enemies. We have to pull a Mega Man and refight the 4 great fiends. And in fact, these are actually their original forms. The forms we were fighting were actually older and were powered down because they were teleported into the future. These are their original newborn, completely healthy forms. And because of that, some of the enemies are more powerful and have lost original weaknesses. Lich, not so much the case. He's still undead, so he's still gonna go down to fire and Dia spells.
Surprised you can't cast heal on him and do like massive damage.
That doesn't happen until later on in the series. Because there's Dispel Undead, that's meant to be your light elemental hurt undead enemies. Later on in the series, yes, you can cast heal, you can throw potions, you can throw Phoenix Downs on undead enemies and then essentially do a negative heal to them.
Yeah, I just remembered what that dragon was called, by the way, Evray.
Oh yeah, Evray, that was it.
And if you toss a Phoenix down in a zombified form, because obviously things don't really die unless you send them in spirit, you do massive damage on like zombie Evray.
Exactly. And Lich can actually be pretty powerful because he has level 8 black magic spells. So he'll cast Flare, Warp, and Kill on you. So watch out. The bosses are very prone to casting instant death spells. And if anything, make sure you have those Protect Rings, which are pretty much the only items that will save you from those.
pathetic damage these enemies are doing right now.
It's supposed to be a final send-off, I guess? Plus the Warrior of Lights are the Gods of Light? Even though they're doing pathetic damage, remember that these dungeons are very labyrinth-esque, so if you don't know the path to originally go through, you're going to be fighting a lot of these pathetically weak enemies, and the damage starts to rack up.
Yeah, just like in the Marsh Cave.
So I definitely recommend bringing maximum amount of potions. You have the money. There is no reason why you should not have max money.
Here she is.
Carrie, and she probably has received the biggest buff from the original forms, as she has lost her weakness to status ailments, so you have to actually fight her this time, and she has a resistance to ice, which she did not have originally.
Oh, wonderful.
But she is still super duper pathetically weak. Even with a Fire 3 spell, she is barely putting a dent on us. She really should be focusing more on her physical attacks.
Or go after our mages. They seem to be like the linchpin of this entire operation.
And here's the problem too, at this point in the game, if I wanted maximum damage out of my mages, I would actually be using their swords. But again, it is really boring to see a fight where all 4 characters just attack with swords.
Yeah, I can understand though.
The biggest change to her is just that weakness loss, and the fact that she will cast Fire 3. Other than that, still the same.
So we've seen Lich, we've seen Carrie. Who's left out of the fiends?
Kraken and Tiamat. The elements of the enemies on this floor should really give away whose we're on. Like I said, if you were well prepared for pretty much the whole game, you should be well prepared for this dungeon. Especially now that I can use Thor's hammer on everything. It never gets bad. The ecstasy of using thunder, free thunders, never goes away. Cardo, you're my favorite character.
And possibly the favourite member of HFC.
Well, true. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, you're doing a super great job wielding the sword Excalibur and smacking shit in the face, bro. But when it comes to these multi-enemy fights, Cardo and his infinite thunders, there's no competition.
I like how in that list carrying the commentary wasn't part of it.
Oh, well, see, I was talking about the character Entom. Don't take it personally, dude. There's 2 Entoms. There's that Entom and you, Entom.
Yeah, there's the buff Entom who literally wields King Arthur's, piece, and then there's you, Tom.
There's buff Entom.
Fucking JoJo Entom.
Dude, oh my god. I wish that they had better poses in Final Fantasy. They really need to do that, where they bring in JoJo poses and JoJo references into Final Fantasy.
Yeah, if you want, just blame Helldragon for all the JoJo talk, that's what I do.
I don't. I was into it just as much. So Kraken's also buffed up because this is his original form. He's no longer weak to lightning, but that doesn't stop me from still using it. He can also cast lightning too, but our magical defense is pretty high, so what's even the point? And in fact, you might actually consider a debuff from him is that the rate in which he'll cast ink on your whole party is decreased to only about 15%. So really, if you have high magic defense, the fight is even easier than before, because your physical attackers are less likely to miss, and all you're doing is getting hit with these weak-ass Thunder 2 spells. Whatever.
Any nasty surprises we gotta look out for here?
Nothing really, like I said. The big shock is that, oh my god, this water elemental enemy who used to be weak to lightning is now using lightning himself.
Yeah.
That's it, but if you can cast Alit, which is the null lightning ability, and you're done. I mean, see, look at that. Even with the addition of lightning in his inventory, it's not that like it's gonna do that much damage. Just keep hitting him.
It's like he saw you using it against him, and he's like, oh, I'll try it out on them, see how they like it.
Well, to be fair, because of time travel, this is before, so he lost the ability to use lightning, and he's like, damn it, why am I now weak to what I could once cast that in my youth?
Nice.
You can really see just how low the boss HPs get at this point. I mean, Kraken He is the anti-penultimate boss, and he only has 800.
So Tiamat is the last one we're up against?
She is, but before we do that, this floor has the last weapon in the game, and it's what I'm going to give Helldragon. Since you have Excalibur, I might as well give... Well, Excalibur is pretty much an exclusively knight item. So the weapon I'm going to get here is sort of the best weapon for everyone else, is the masamune.
Yes.
Masamune has high critical hits, and in later versions allows you to inflict a lot of hits. So it's sort of equal to what Excalibur does, because Excalibur is pure power, low hits. Masamune is high amounts of hits, high critical hit. So I decided it's just fair to give 1 and 1. Plus, it makes Helldragon look more of a weeaboo.
I was literally about to say that, son of a bitch.
Look at this. Still, just... My party's so powerful. I'm so proud of you guys. You used to be so weak at the beginning of the game, having trouble taking down goblins and such, and now you're wielding swords and spells of legend.
Oh, he cut him in half with his katana.
I'm so proud.
Right, now can we go take down the final fiend and end this silly paradox?
Yes, we will. Look, just getting the Masamune is essentially required in this game if you want to at least LP it.
Yeah.
Plus, if not, the floor related to the Wind Fiend is pretty short and boring. I do like how even in later versions of the game, they don't actually put sprites. Like, the fiends just pop up out of nowhere. I think it kind of adds to the danger of the dungeon. And Final Fantasy IX, which the final dungeon draws a lot of inspiration, will do the exact same thing.
You love Final Fantasy IX, don't you?
Final Fantasy IX is actually my favorite. I mean, I haven't actually said it in this playthrough, but Final Fantasy IX is my favorite Final Fantasy. However, I would never recommend it as someone's first Final Fantasy, as a lot of the enjoyment of the game is based on how it is a love letter to the previous installments of the series.
Yeah.
So if you play it first, you miss out on so many references and a lot of what makes Final Fantasy IX so enjoyable. So I would always recommend, like, start off with 4 or 6 or 7 or 10, and then play at least 2 other Final Fantasies, and then play 9, and then you can enjoy it for what it truly is.
Out of the ones I've experienced, obviously I've never completed a mainline game, I'd say 4 and 10 are my favourites.
4 and 10 are really good, like I said. That's why I always seem to recommend those for starters. 4 is one I would recommend to people who enjoy old school games, or old school RPGs, play 4.
Yeah.
6 is if you really are more of a fan of later SNES, early PlayStation RPGs. Play that if you want to play like one of the best from the get-go and get the best out of Final Fantasy. Play 7 if, 7 is popular. Like, just try it out for its sheer popularity. And 10 is a more simpler, streamlined, more story-focused Final Fantasy. So, there's a lot of starting points, but it mostly depends on what you want out of your gaming experience. And if you enjoy those, from there, that's when I encourage people to, okay, if you like this, then play this. And then from there, eventually, all roads lead to Final Fantasy IX being the best. Yep. It's Garland. Again, he is our final boss.
Who saw this coming? Not me. I played Dissidia. And so...
Anyone who has played fucking Dissidia. Anyone who knows anything about Final Fantasy I being one giant time loop. And in fact, it's actually a pretty cool plot twist for an NES game. I mean, with most of the Dragon Quest games, yeah, there's time travel involved in those too, but this sort of plot twist is pretty outrageous and mind-blowing at the time. I'm casting fast because fast will increase the number of hits our 2 fighters will do. So rather than doing like 3 or 2 hits, I'm buffing them up to 6.
I believe Chaos has access to every kind of magic, is that right?
He has access to every element of spell. He can also cast Scorch, which will instantly kill. He can do level 2 blizzard, level 2 fire, level 2 thunder. Watch out for those. In later versions, he gets essentially like special elemental abilities like blaze or tornado, which become his moveset in Dissidia.
Nice.
But because this is the NES version, he does not have a lot of HP. In fact, he only has 2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and in case you haven't noticed, I'm doing a good couple hundred per fighter. I mean, this boss fight, it has a very good plot build up to it. You know, if you talk to the Circle of Sages, then you get this whole mysticism of he's an original evil. He created this time cycle. How big bad is he? And then you're like, wait, Garland, you were like the puny little knight I knocked down in the very beginning of the game. And then he turns into chaos. Like, there's a lot of good quick turns that the game does to build up chaos. But in the NES, to only have him have about 2,000 HP, it's kind of pathetic.
Yeah, the interactions between Garland and Chaos, who are voiced by Chris Sabat and Keith David, respectively, in Dissidia, is actually pretty interesting. I love that whole kind of time cycle thing.
Yeah, I do love that Dissidia, not only in explaining the backstory of Final Fantasy, also creates a relationship between Garland and Chaos, essentially him and himself. And you want to watch out for that Quake. That is his instant kill spell. Watch out for it. But since everyone in the party has either a protect ring or a ribbon, they're all safe from instant death. The only thing at this point you really need to watch out for is Kiraja, which will fully heal him, which I allow him to use, if only so that the fight didn't end instantly. I allowed the final boss to fully heal himself so that this wouldn't end too quickly. That is how OP the Warriors of Lights have become.
Survive if we let you, evil.
I also decided to throw out all my spells. Again, Richie and Carter would probably be doing more damage if they were hitting with their swords, but I've been saving spells. I've been super conservative, and it's like, you know what? Fuck it. Throw all the spells at Chaos. Let's end this shit. Also, in case you haven't noticed, unfortunately the NES version doesn't have new music for bosses, or even the final boss. Which is a shame. Later versions do, and the final boss remix song for Final Fantasy 1 is actually a pretty cool boss fight music.
Can't take my eyes off that face on his crotch.
Oh yeah, it's a... Oh god, what is that one Yu-Gi-Oh card that actually has like a dragon penis? Zork?
Yeah.
Zork and Palace.
Yeah. That was a fun end to that arc. Oh, you know, Yami has to leave. By the way, Monster Penis.
Monster Penis. That is how Final Fantasy is about to end, is with Monster Penis.
What a classy end to this Hellfire Comms playthrough.
I'm just gonna keep throwing spells at him. I tried my very best to make Cardo deal the final blow, because remember, Cardo was the one who killed Garland. So I thought it would have been awesome if I continued the cycle and had Cardo also kill Chaos, but with Antom and Hell Dragon dealing massive amounts of sword damage, that ended up being pretty difficult.
Yeah, Hell Dragon's just gonna leap in, cut him in two, and be all nothing personnel, kid.
That's exactly what he just fucking did.
Nice, I have not watched this video in advance, I swear. Oh god, the game's breaking up!
This is the beginning of another Final Fantasy tradition of having final bosses disintegrate. I prefer the ones that they did in 8 and 9. Again, 9. Fucking great game. But no, final bosses tend to disintegrate, and I like how the background itself is also disintegrating.
We didn't just destroy time, did we?
No. We just defeated a time paradox and a time loop.
Oh, thank god, because, you know, defeating the fiends caused a lot of shit to happen.
Yeah, well, to be fair, some of the people even knew about the time loop. Like, one of the head sages who made the prophecy about the Light Warriors wasn't actually a soothsayer, but he was a historian and saw stories about Warriors of Lights in the past, which now that we know, were actually us. So he was telling us the story about ourselves in the past. Yeah, I hope that hurt your head as much as it hurt mine, but if you didn't talk to the Circle of Sages, this is the point when you start to get the story of how Garland created hatred in his heart that created the four fiends who, I guess, pulled him into the past, which he then sent forth into the future to drain the Crystal of Energy, and then the four fiends send him again into the past, and it's very confusing. Makes no sense. Play Dissidia, maybe it will, but that's the end of the first Final Fantasy game.
This is usually the part where we'd start wrapping things up, so even though this is your jam, so to speak, what do you think about Final Fantasy 1?
I love it. I love how difficult it can be. I like just how simple until the very last, 10 minutes of the game it gets, but I love what they attempted to do. With so much risk on the line, with how dire the situations were, the fact that they decided to go all out and make this great, if not obscure, if not difficult, if not very, very poorly programmed game, what they end up creating, I love. And I'm glad that they started off on a very good foot for the rest of the series.
Where would you rank it in terms of the mainline games?
I would definitely rank it in my in the top half, at least.
Okay.
It may be a little nostalgia, which I know I tend to be the one guy who shoots down the nostalgia factor, but Final Fantasy 1 actually has that for me.
I would like to make this video pretty much end around the end point, so I guess I'll try and pad out my opinion of the game. As I pointed out towards the beginning, I stopped roughly around the time I kicked Astos' face in. 15 HP, 1 fighter remaining, I think you'll find. I think it would be a bit petty of me to criticise an RPG like this for having, old school RPG standards, really high encounter rates just to pad out the length of the game and such. I mean, I'm going to do it anyway, but still. I much prefer the story and pacing of 4, of what I played of that, and obviously 10, but that's super modern compared to this. But I had a good time. I probably would have chosen someone else to be the co-commentator, but I'm glad I was able to experience this with you, Mexi, and hopefully we'll come back for another Final Fantasy game one day.
Oh, we definitely will. We're going to be continuing on. Next Final Fantasy, we're tackling Final Fantasy 2. And by that, I mean actual 2, with Firion and the Emperor.
Nice. I guess we could wrap up here, so I'm going to hand over to you, Maxi. Take it away.
Despite all the tribulation this playthrough may have had, I'd like to thank all of you for sticking around. I'm MBM.
I'm Entom64.
And we'll catch you all next time.